Good morning. Welcome to episode number 2 of our study of the book of James. Thank you for joining with me today. We're going to get into James chapter 1, verses 9 through 16 here for our study this morning. As I had mentioned last time when I began the book of James, James is not actually the accurate title of what this book should be. The book should be probably named Jacob because the name of James, when you look at the Greek language, is Iacobus, and that is where the name Jacob comes from. But the name of James was changed in order to, this is again what church history says, in order to honor the King James of England, who sponsored the writing of the King James Version of the Bible. So regardless of that, we're going to go through what we know as the book of James, and today we're going to pick it up in chapter 1, verses 9 through 16. Now, give you just a little bit of a reminder of what God had been speaking to us last time through our study of James. James was encouraging the believers to be patient and endure during the trials that they were going through. In fact, when you encounter various trials, God is doing a working in your life. The word trials is the same Greek word for trial, test, tribulation, and temptation. It's all the same word, and so you can substitute that word in there in the entire thing when James was saying to them, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, when you fall into various tests, temptations, tribulations, all of those things. When you encounter those things, consider it joy. Now, how do you do that? Well, you do it because joy is different than happiness. He is not saying be happy. Be happy that you're going through what you're going through. Be happy that you're having the hardship that you're having. Be happy that you have this tribulation or this temptation or test or trial in your life. He is saying consider it joy. Joy is an inward work that God does in us. God creates pure joy in our lives when we surrender our lives to Him. The reason we don't have joy is because we haven't truly surrendered our lives to Christ. We are doing what he's going to say next. We have minds that are double-minded. Our lives are double-minded. So instead of really surrendering to Christ, we are trying to run life ourselves, do life ourselves. We are in conflict with God because of a double-mindedness that we have. Somebody who is double-minded is somebody who's unstable, James says. Somebody who's double-minded is like a person floating on the waves of the sea, and you are floating and you're drifting and you're being tossed wherever the wind takes you, wherever the waves of the sea take you. Instead, somebody who is singularly minded is somebody who is anchored in God's will, anchored in God's presence, surrendered completely to God. God is the Lord of their lives. Instead of them and us being Lord of our own lives, God becomes Lord of your life. And that's really how you deal with the double-mindedness that is there, the dividedness that happens. Now, James is going to go on and talk about what we are going to do and how we are going to face these trials, tests, tribulations, and temptations that we go through in life. So we're going to pick it up in verse 9 of chapter 1. And we're only going to go through a handful of verses today, but they're very powerful and very meaningful verses. So let's jump into this and look at James chapter 1, verse 9. So James is going to write this to really give encouragement to those that are being affected by the trials, by the tests, by the tribulations that they're going through. And so James says, let the lowly brother glory in his exaltation, but the rich in his humiliation, because as a flower of the field he will pass away. Now, ultimately, what is going on and what is happening in life is that people who are rich tend to lean upon their riches. They often will say, I don't really have a need of God because I've got everything that I need right here. In fact, this is something that God confronts when he's writing the book of Revelation to the church in Laodicea. And it says to the church in Laodicea, people have said, I have become rich and I have need of nothing. And God says, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth. And so, and why was that? It was because we don't need God anymore, because we have everything we need in life. And I want you to really think of it in this kind of a manner. If you have a person, and just picture that as a person's, the inner core life. And if you put in the inner core life that they're, put a little minus sign, that they're empty on the inside, people will look for something in order to try to fill up that emptiness that is there. People will look to money, they will look to material possessions, they will look to relationships, they will look to status, they will look to their jobs, they will look to their kids. People are always in search of something that will satisfy and become the source of their life. But the problem becomes that none of those things will ever matter. They will never fulfill anything. Somebody who's going through a trial and everything is being stripped away from your life comes to the final realization that the only one that will be able to ever fulfill my life is Christ and Christ alone. He becomes the source of my life. I can't be looking for anything else. He becomes the source. If I make money my source of life, I will always be empty and I will never be satisfied. If I make a person the source of my life, they will never be able to measure up to that status and that requirement. If I make if I make money the source of my life and I lose all my money, or if I make my retirement portfolio the source of my life and it just crashes and I lose it all. If I make my material possessions the source of my life and I lose my home because of a fire or a flood, or it gets taken from me, then I'm going to be left to be empty. But if Christ is the source of my life, whatever happens outside of me, that source does not change. He will always be there. As we face tribulations and hard times, even coming out before us as the world changes around us, and we perhaps will undergo some intense types of persecution, Christ has to remain the source of my life, because if everything else is stripped away, it is really him that matters. Now, if you are looking to money and power and fame and job and stock portfolios and relationships, and they are the source of your life, it will be like what James says right here. He goes on to say this next. For no sooner has the sun risen with a burning heat than it withers the grass, and its flower falls, and its beautiful appearance perishes. So I want you to think about this. If people are making things their source of life that are temporary, like money, jobs, relationships, status, fame, materialistic possessions, if you are making anything like that that's temporary a source of life, as soon as the heat comes, it will scorch all of this stuff that you've always leaned upon, and you will be left with nothing. It will all fade away. It will just wither away. That's why Christ in my heart has to become the source of my life. That's why this rooted in God's word. We want God's word deep into our hearts. We want the Spirit of God deep into our hearts so that we don't fall away and burn up when hard times, persecution, trials, tests, tribulations, and temptations come our way. So James is going to say, look, here's what happens to people that make money the source of their life. He says, so the rich man also will fade away in all his pursuits. And so that becomes the ultimate conclusion. If you are leaning upon your riches and you start going through a trial, you'll realize you've got nothing to lean upon. Riches are not going to do anything for you. Materialistic possessions won't do anything for you. It is only Christ who becomes our source of life that can help us through the hard times that we face. Let's keep going with what James says next. Blessed is the man who endures temptation. Now, this is not a gender-specific word. Blessed is the human. Blessed is the person. Blessed is the man or woman who endures temptation. Now, what is the word temptation? Well, think about it in what I talked about earlier with the word trial. It's the same exact Greek word. Test, trial, tribulation, and temptation all is the same word, and it is a trying of life. It is a testing of faith. So you can read that verse this way: blessed is the one who endures trials. Blessed is the one who endures temptation. Blessed is the one who endures a testing of their faith. Blessed is the one who is able to go through those hard times in life, because as they go through those hard times in life, they are going to be able to face and do what they need to do. They're going to be able to face and experience what they need to experience. So I want you to think about this word temptation right here and realize that the word temptation is going to mean a few different terms. That word temptation you think of it again as in this way, that the word temptation is going to be the word trial, it's going to be the word test, it's going to be the word temptation, and it's going to be the word tribulation. So all of those are ways that God is saying, when you endure any of these kind of things, when you endure any of these kinds of hardships, so those kind of hardships, when you endure these, you will be blessed. For when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him. So what does that mean, and what does that relate to? Well, the crown of life was the wreath that was placed upon a person's head as they competed in the Olympic Games or in any kind of games. If you won the event, you were given a crown. Now today we put medals upon people, but in those days it was a crown that was placed upon their heads. So blessed is the one who endures tests, trials, tribulations, and temptations, because the one who endures them is the one who will receive the victorious crown, because they've crossed the finish line and they have run the race. That's an important concept, to realize that you have run the race and you have actually won the race that you have been running in. So now, that idea, this idea that God says, that is, look, if you endure, so I want you to think about that word, endure versus giving up. Endure versus the word quit or quitting. So God is saying, look, I want you to endure. I don't want you to give up. I want you to go through it with victory. Don't quit in the middle of it. You have a battle you're facing. Don't give in to the battle. You have a battle you're experiencing. Don't quit in the battle. You have maybe an addiction that you're fighting. Don't give in to the addiction. Don't give in to the temptation, the test, the trial, the tribulation. Instead, work through it. Endure through it. Now, how do we endure? Well, for some things like that, you need other people around you. You need support around you. You need to be in the Word of God. You need God at the core of your life. He has to become the source of your life, that you are looking to Him. He will provide endurance. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, it talks about the fact that no test, trial, tribulation, or temptation has overcome you except that which is common to man. But God is faithful, and He will provide a way out. He will provide for you a way of escape. Now, that way of escape, again, get this and understand this. This is critically important. God's plan is that the way of escape is through the trial. It is not quitting on the trial. So I want you to think about getting on the interstate or getting on a highway. You could get on the highway, and let's say you're here at point A and you want to make it all the way to the finish. You want to make it all the way over here to point B. You don't get halfway through and get to this point and just say, you know what, I'm just giving up. This is too hard, it's too far, I'm not going to go anymore. You don't do that. Instead, you keep pursuing and you keep persevering until you get to the end. God has promised that He will provide a way of escape. What is the way of escape? The way of escape is to reach the end of the point of perseverance. The way of escape is through the test that you're facing. It's not quitting the test. It's not escaping the test. It is going through the test. Now, He says that He will provide a way of escape, but what is the way of escape? It's He will empower you to go through whatever it is that you're facing. God wants us to endure in the times of test and temptation that we face. Now, He's going to go on to say this, let no one say when he is tempted, I am tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does He Himself tempt anyone. So it's not God that is doing this. God is not the one who is testing, tempting, trying, or causing the tribulation. God is not tempted by evil. He does not tempt anyone to do that. Instead, each one is drawn away. Each one is tempted when he is drawn away and by his own desires and enticed. Then, when desire is conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it's full grown, brings forth death. Do not be deceived, my beloved brethren. Now, I want you to make note of a few words in here. God says this with these words. He says, look, when you are tempted, don't say it's God. It's not God doing this. The temptation is something that is different. The temptation is coming from within. He says specifically these words. Each one is drawn away by his own desires. Notice the word desires. And enticed. So we are drawn away and we are enticed by our own desires. Now, what does that mean? What does it mean that we are enticed and drawn away by our own desires? Now, these are words that have to do with hunting and they have to do with fishing. Those are the terms that are being used. And the word drawn away means to be lured from safety. So think of it as a hunting. If you're hunting, you're trying to lure the prey out into the open. If you're fishing, you're luring the fish by using some kind of a bait and some kind of a hook. So when you're fishing for a fish and you want to catch the fish, you are fishing for them using a specific bait and hook. And here's what he says. We are drawn away, so we are lured, that's the word drawn away, lured by our own desires and enticed. That idea, our own desires, means the word own. Again, that's another interesting word. The word here for own is the Greek word that means idiosyncrasy. An idiosyncrasy, if you think of, well, what is an idiosyncrasy is a uniqueness. Every one of us has a uniqueness. We have quirks. We're quirky people. We have different quirks about us. That's what the word own means. It means you are being drawn, so you're being lured by your own quirks, your own uniquenesses, meaning it's not always the same for everybody. So go back to this for just a second. He says we are drawn away. That means lured by our own desires. So that own, again, is the word idiosyncrasy. It just means unique. We all have our own unique things that are luring us or tempting us, and the things that are luring us are our own desires. What is our own desires? That means it's a desire that comes from within you that may not be the same for every other person. You have a unique desire that is, therefore, it is luring you. It's luring you from safety. So again, go back to this analogy of fish. You're out there fishing for fish, and you're trying to find the unique bait that you can use to lure that fish in order to catch the fish, in order to reel the fish in, net the fish, throw the fish into the boat. You are trying to lure the fish from the safety of the water through a unique bait. Now, think about this on a human term. Each one of us is being lured by a bait that is unique to each one of us. Satan is out there fishing, and we're like fish in the water. And we're swimming around and we're minding our own business and we're doing whatever a fish does every day in life. And as we are there being swimming around minding our own business, all of a sudden there's a bait on a hook that's hanging there dangling right in front of us. And those baits are unique. What Satan is going to use to fish for me is different than he might use to fish for you. He may be using alcohol for one person. He may be using drugs for another person. He may be using sex for another person. He may be using greed for another. He may be using materialistic things for another. He may be using pride for another. He may, varieties of things that Satan is out there fishing with. And each one is unique to us because we don't all bite on the same kind of bait. He is luring, drawing us away, using our own weaknesses against us. So you have to think for yourself, what are those things that you have a tendency to bite on? Maybe not everybody does, but what are your uniquenesses that Satan uses to try to hook you, to reel you in, and to throw you onto the deck of the boat, get you out of the safety that you're in, to really destroy your life? Now, The stronger we get with God, the more the more he protects us and helps us, and the less we tend to bite on those baits. But then sometimes Satan just presents that bait in a little bit different manner. In other words, instead of just letting the bait hang there, now he is moving the bait up and down. He's jigging the bait. It's moving up and down. Then later, maybe he's trolling the bait. Later, maybe he's casting the bait and reeling it in front of you. And he's presenting the bait in a very unique and different way. If he gets you at the right circumstances and the right times, you will bite on the bait, because it is something unique to you that really fulfills you, that really is your weakness that he uses against you. And so we need to get God's help to help us fight the battle against the baits that are being used against us. Now, when you bite on the bait, as it says here, we are all drawn away by our own desires. We are enticed. We are lured. We are baited by our own unique desires. And that baiting and that luring that he does with us is what we tend to bite on. Now, when you bite, here's what it says. When it is conceived, when you bite, it like plants something in you, and it brings forth sin. It gives birth to sin. You have now sinned. And if you don't deal with the sin and you let it keep growing in your life, it will bring forth death. If you let the sin take hold and you don't confess it, you don't deal with it, you don't expose it, you don't work through it, you don't let God help you with it, it will bring forth death in your life. It will keep going and it will keep destroying. You've all seen examples of somebody who's an alcoholic who continually bites on the bait of alcohol. Alcohol comes into their lives. It's planted in their lives. It grows in their lives, and it brings forth death. What does it destroy? It could destroy an alcoholic. It will destroy their finances. It will destroy their marriage relationship and their relationship with their kids. It will destroy their job and the work that they do. It will destroy their friendships. It will destroy their extended family, and it can even destroy their own physical life. That's how sin works. If you bite on the bait of sin and you let it be planted in your heart and you don't confess it and deal with it, it will bring forth death. But God can help, and God will be with you, and God will help you if you turn to him, if you let him become the source of your life. So James gives the one final warning: do not be deceived, my beloved brethren. The thing that you are looking to, the sinful things that are being dangled in front of your eyes, that are being thrown in front of your nose, are things that will destroy your life. Don't be deceived. Don't bite on the bait. Don't be lured from the safety. Don't give in to the temptation. Don't follow your own unique desires. The word desire, that strong lust in your life. Don't bite on it. Don't believe it. Don't give in to it. Instead, persevere. Stay strong. Stay focused on him. Let him be the strength of your heart and the strength of your life. Lean into God and lean upon God as you go through everything that you face. Well, that's all I have for you today. And I hope that that was helpful, and I hope that you were able to get something out of that. I hope that you will recognize in your own life the way that Satan tempts you, and that you won't give in to the temptation, that you won't bite on the bait. He wants to destroy your life. And so he will bring forth all kinds of lures to pull you away from God. Stay strong. Stay committed to the Lord. Stay connected to him through prayer, through being in his word, and through connecting with a local congregation and body of believers. Be involved in small groups and Bible studies so that you stay encouraged no matter what comes your way. Well, God bless you. Thank you for joining me. Join me back here next time as we get further into the book of James in our third episode, when we tackle the next section that James is going to give and throw our way. See you next time.